If you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe and become part of this community. Oh, and also, go cop that fresh merch and listen to my new album in the description. Roddy Ricch released his new album Live Life Fast exactly a week ago on December 17th, and we had been waiting for this album for the longest time. The, prior release to that was Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial, which elevated him to this new level of fame and stardom that we know him for, but that released at the end of 2019, so it's been 2 years now. Basically, it's been a very long time since we got a new Roddy Ricch album, and obviously we thought that this was going to be the next step in his career towards, people call him the leader of this new generation, one of the best ones, and we thought that we just would see him, elevate yet another level in his artistry on this one. But obviously, I made a video the day after the album dropped talking about my first impression of it, talking about how I was actually quite disappointed, so it didn't really live up to what I had expected. And that's also what I heard from most of you guys, who then also expressed y'all's opinions in the comments, and it was just not what we had wanted and expected after waiting 2 years for that. I thought the fact that he was taking longer to release this album meant that we were going to get some sort of creative concept, of some sort of musical innovation on this thing, but this is basically an album that he could have dropped half a year after his first debut album. So I was actually quite disappointed. We just got the first week numbers in. We're going to take a look at that and then just see how, Roddy Ricch can move on from this and maybe come back and prove himself once again. So Roddy Ricch is expected to sell 64,000 units of his album Live Life Fast in its first week. This is, of course, just a prediction. This doesn't have to be true. We have to wait another day or two for the actual numbers to come in from Billboard, who collects this data, but this is very close to probably what's gonna, be the final numbers. And when you look at the streams on Spotify, for example, not even all the tracks on the album have 1 million streams yet, and most of them, don't go past the 2 to 3 million stream mark, so it does look pretty weak so far. And I thought that this thing was going to be more hyped and more people would be listening, but there's not like a single song that's taken off. I mean, on Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial, we had The Box, which obviously was huge. We had Start With Me, for example. We had Backseat. All those songs that were just, they were just there and people were listening to them and they were like, yo, this kid Roddy Ricch coming out here, he's going to be one of the big ones. Now it's kind of like, yeah, what is this? And Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial, just to remind you, sold 101,000 units in its first week. And honestly, I thought that this album, Live Life Fast, was going to sell 100,000 base. And then, even on top of that, some. And I thought that was going to be like, an evolution in terms of sales. When you look at his first mixtapes, they sold like 20,000. Then his debut album sold 100,000, which is obviously pretty good for a debut album. This is very good for a debut album. But then the next album, I thought was going to be like 150. And, just kind of progressing in that way, like other artists, like, I compare him to Kendrick, not just because they're both from Compton, not just because people are calling Roddy Ricch, the GOAT of this new generation, just like they did Kendrick of that generation 10 years ago, but also because in the way that they now structured their release, they're very similar. Roddy Ricch also took this long break before releasing this new album, and very early on in his career decided not to be someone who just chases the next hit and is like, I'm going to drop again in half a year because, otherwise people are going to forget about me, but who rather values the art and, is very confident in the fact that people are still going to be listening to him even if he takes a little bit longer to release his next project, something that Kendrick has done very famously. So that's why I always compare the two. But, in terms of Roddy Ricch, this is kind of a little bit of a fall off after he peaked kind of with Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial. And when you look at all the comments under the, expectations for his first week numbers, everyone seems to be like, yeah, this was a L. This was a flop for him. So Roddy really took that L with these numbers that are now coming in. And as I said, go look at the streaming numbers. They're not looking too well either. I don't know what exactly the cause for this is. I have my own problems with the record. It's just not very diverse. It's just very homogenous in terms of production. You know, he did handle a lot of the production himself. I think the lyrical content and just what he's talking about is just sometimes very bland and very surface scratching. So that's my problem with the record. But I thought that maybe some people would latch onto one or two songs, make them like a TikTok trend. But it's really not looking too good. I mean, I think it has to do with the songs just not having enough character for people to actually care about them. When you look at Please Excuse Me for Being Antisocial, I mentioned The Box Start With Me or Backseat, for example. All of those tracks have like their own individual character that when you put on the song, you hear the first couple of, the first couple of sounds of like the beat looping, you're like, yeah, that's like the one. You can kind of identify the track. But on Live Life Fast, it's just kind of all one mush together, just, low 808 bass mess, which I don't really like. So I think that has to do with it. So you can't really pinpoint like one song and make it distinct from the other ones. I think that has to do with it. But other than that, I thought that this was going to do better than it did. But it seems like Roddy has just took the L with this one. It's not, I'm not sure if he can bounce back from this. A lot of people are already in the comments like, yo, Roddy can't go out like this and he's going to bounce back again the next album, which I really hope he does. I think Roddy has a lot of potential in hip-hop, especially. I also was one of the supporters who was like, yeah, Roddy is really together with like Lil Baby and together with like all the other artists that we mentioned. They're like the leaders of this new school, and Roddy was always up there, and that's why I had these high expectations for this record. But I think that he sees this, he's not stupid. He recognizes that people don't like his album that much, or as much as the anticipations were and as much as people were hyping it up. And I think that he can come back with something greater the next time around. I just really hope he steps up his pen game. Just the stuff he was talking about, mostly like women on this record. It was very surface scratching. I think Roddy has a lot more potential especially when you listen to like Feed the Streets and Feed the Streets 2. There's a lot of more deeper stuff on there than we saw on this new record. Maybe that's just where he's at in his life right now, and that's all good. But Roddy, he has more potential and more up his sleeve than he showed on this record, and I'm very convinced of that. So I'm looking forward to what he got coming up in the future. So Roddy Ricch took a L. 64,000 units expected to sell first week for Live Life Fast. Worse than his first studio album, which sold 101,000 first week. So yeah, kind of like a downward slope, but I hope he can bounce back from that. That's my thoughts on this, my interpretations, my theories. Now I want to know what you think about this. How much do you think it'll end up selling actually? Do you think that this is an L for Roddy Ricch? Do you think that, in the end, this is actually pretty good? Did you expect more? Did you expect less? What are your favorite songs on there? Do you think you can bounce back from this now, step back in terms of sales? And just where do you see Roddy Ricch in the future in hip-hop? Let me know in the comments down below. If you watched this video to the end and liked it, and you want to stay up to date with all current hip-hop events and releases, make sure to subscribe, turn on notifications, hit that like button, and go follow my social media and blog down in the description. It really helps me out. Until the next one, y'all have an incredible day, and y'all take care.